1994 was an absolutely awesome time to be a child. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers had taken over playgrounds and living rooms alike, transforming schoolyards into impromptu battle arenas where every child debated over who got to be the Green Ranger. Meanwhile, the 16-bit console war was at its fever pitch, with Sega and Nintendo vying for supremacy in a golden age of gaming that gave us Sonic's blazing speed and Super Mario World's timeless charm. We even had frickin' Pogs, so how can anyone not be grateful to have grown up in this era? In my last upload, we dove into a cherished relic of my childhood, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers for the Super Nintendo, a solid side-scrolling beat-em-up that brought the show's electrifying energy to life. It was good fun, but here's the kicker. Despite its faithfulness to the franchise, Tommy Oliver, the legendary Green Ranger, was shockingly absent. For us kids, this was a crushing blow, leaving many of us longing for our favourite flute-playing villain turned dragon-summoning hero to be in the game. But then came a twist worthy of the Power Rangers themselves. One fateful evening, while tuning into Games Master, I discovered something jaw-dropping. The Sega Mega Drive version had a secret that Nintendo didn't: an unlockable Green Ranger. Sega proved once again that Sega does what Nintendo don't, and this revelation rocked my young gamer world. For a moment, I couldn't help but question my life choices, wondering if siding with Nintendo over Sega had been a monumental misstep. After all, the rivalry was fierce, and so was the jealousy. In all those playground arguments regarding which console was better, had I been wrong all along? Had my favouritism to Nintendo blinded me to the wonders lurking on the other side? The thought gnawed at me as I imagined the thrill of summoning the Dragonzord on Sega's slicker, edgier platform. It was like discovering an alternate reality where the grass was greener, literally. I was green with envy. 30 years later, I decided it was time to uncover the truth once and for all. There was only one way to settle it: play through the original Power Rangers game on the Sega Mega Drive in its entirety, and find out if my allegiance to the Super Nintendo had robbed me of a perfect childhood. So with all of that said, hello ladies and gentlemen, Big Daddy Top Pat here. This is the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers game I didn't play. Yeah. The 16-bit era was nothing short of legendary, wasn't it? A golden age of gaming that defined our childhoods and still holds a special place in our hearts. And the best part? Modern developers are recapturing that magic, bringing us incredible retro-inspired games that channel the spirit of gaming's peak years. Speaking of these timeless titles, I've got an offer that'll make your inner gamer jump for joy. How about 60% off the pulse-pounding Streets of Rage 4? Or maybe you prefer up to a jaw-dropping 78% off the action-packed River City Girls series. And crazier, the electrifying Double Dragon Gaiden is slashed by a massive 80% to be yours for just $5.19. But that's not all. By using my affiliate links, you can unlock up to 90% off of thousands of games, including some of the biggest AAA heavy hitters out there, such as 45% off the Final Fantasy VII Remake Rebirth Twin Pack. Now's the perfect time to treat yourself, because let's face it, you deserve it. So grab some games for next to nothing right now. Here it is, ladies and gentlemen, the one that got away, the Sega Mega Drive Power Rangers game I was so desperate to play as a child. Unlike the Super Nintendo version, which is a side-scrolling beat-em-up, the Mega Drive game is a versus fighter, like one of my all-time favourites of the era, Street Fighter 2. In other words, it's nothing like the game I grew up with, so everything is new to me here. This one was developed by Ban Presto, a Japanese game developer and publisher who was active in the early 90s, producing a variety of games, often based on popular anime and tokusatsu franchises. A tokusatsu franchise refers to a series or property within the genre of Japanese live-action entertainment that relies heavily on special effects. Think Godzilla, Ultraman, Kamen Rider, and of course Super Sentai. The franchise is all the crazy costumed fight sequences and robot battles came from, which we saw in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Ban Presto games were usually simple and easy to pick up, making them approachable for a wide audience, especially younger players. but the quality of them widely varied, largely depending on the platform and genre. So let's look closer at this game and draw our own conclusions. After making it past the intro screen, which I must comment doesn't feature the same cool lyrics the Super Nintendo game has, the Mega Drive version does at least bring its own musical charm with the distinct gritty sound the console is known for. That unmistakable Mega Drive twang sets the tone in its own way, instantly making this one feel authentically retro. The same high energy music carries over as we transition into the crude yet charming cutscenes, which do their best to emulate the show's over-the-top flair. These scenes set the stage perfectly, introducing Rita Repulsa as the ultimate threat, and even showing Finster hard at work crafting one of his signature monsters to crush those ever-annoying, meddlesome Power Rangers. It's a delightful throwback to the campy drama of the series, and while the animation might be rough around the edges, it nails the vibe fans loved. The player select screen may be as bare bones as they come, but it makes up for it with some cool animations. After you lock in your choice, you're treated to a dynamic sequence of Rangers morphing into their iconic suits, with more imagery lifted from the show. It's a small touch, but one that adds an exciting sense of anticipation before diving into the action. As for the action itself, just as I explained, this one is a versus fighter. However, unlike Street Fighter, where you can pick from a diverse roster of characters, here you're limited to choosing one of the Power Rangers in single player mode. All the monstrous opponents you face are CPU controlled, which keeps the focus squarely on battling Rita's minions rather than mixing things up. Street Fighter 2 comparisons are obviously inevitable, but unfortunately this game falls short in several key areas that make it feel like a missed opportunity rather than any sort of rival. Firstly, Street Fighter 2 thrives on its diverse roster of playable characters, each with unique moves, personalities and fighting styles. This variety gives players a reason to experiment, master different techniques and find their favourite fighter. Here we can only play as the designated good guys. This lack of playable diversity drains replay value and limits the depth that Street Fighter 2 excels at. The gameplay mechanics themselves also highlight the gulf between the two games. Street Fighter 2 is renowned for its responsive controls, intricate combos and nuanced strategy that reward skilled players. Power Rangers, while serviceable, lacks the precision and fluidity of the legendary game. This one feels more basic, with simpler movesets and a less refined sense of balance between characters, making it feel more like a button masher than a game demanding real mastery. The presentation is another area where Power Rangers struggles to compete. Street Fighter 2 immerses players with its vibrant stages, memorable character designs and iconic soundtracks that elevate the fighting experience, whereas in this one, not only do we tend to play stages over and over, but each of the Rangers are just multicoloured sprite swaps of the Red Ranger. Look, they all have exactly the same helmet. What a cop-out. At least every other stage mixes it up somewhat after Rita makes her monsters grow. This means we get a break from the Power Rangers, allowing us to control the Megazord instead, which is a nice change of pace. One aspect worth acknowledging is that although all the Rangers look identical in their suits, they do at least have distinct weapons and movesets, giving each one a slightly different feel. It's a small touch that adds a bit of variety, especially when compared to the latest Power Rangers beat 'em up released earlier this month, which didn't even attempt this. That said, it's hard not to feel a little let down by the absence of an option to play as the Rangers in their unmorphed forms, a nostalgic feature from the 16-bit Power Rangers game I grew up with that not only added an extra layer of charm but also brought the game's structure closer in line with the TV show it was taking inspiration from. In contrast, this game was a straightforward versus fighter, with most of the storytelling delivered through brief cutscenes between stages. One aspect I genuinely appreciated was its inclusion of the show's iconic Green with Evil arc. This means, as mentioned at the start, you get to face off against the legendary Green Ranger, and after defeating him he joins your team, a thrilling moment for any fan of the series. It's a great nod to one of the most memorable storylines in Power Rangers lore. Honestly, if a Super Nintendo game had featured a stage dedicated to this pivotal event, I think it would likely have elevated its status even further, cementing it as the definitive Power Rangers game of the era, rather than just an okay beat 'em up. With franchises like this, I believe fan service can make or break how memorable a title will become. Speaking of the Green Ranger, even as a nearly 40-year-old man, it still brought a genuine warmth to my heart to play as him in this otherwise bad to mediocre game. There's just something timeless about the character's iconic presence, from his dragon shield to the unmistakable sound of the dragon dagger. It's a reminder of how much nostalgia can carry an experience even when the rest of the game struggles to impress. For those few moments, I was transported back to my childhood, reliving the excitement of seeing the Green Ranger join the team for the first time. It's a shame the rest of the game doesn't live up to that same level of magic, but at least it delivers on this small, meaningful slice of Power Rangers history, picking up where the Super Nintendo failed. Speaking of this happening, once the Green Ranger is unlocked, the game gives us the option to play as the Dragon Zord instead of defaulting to the Megazord after monsters grow to their giant forms. This is a fantastic addition and pleased me immensely, as piloting the Dragon Zord was always a dream of mine. It's a small but significant touch as well that stands out, especially when you consider that the brand new Power Rangers game didn't include this feature, so more credit where it's due. This game delivers on some key fan-pleasing details that the modern installment surprisingly overlooked. It's moments like these that remind you how much potential this game had, even if it doesn't hit the mark across the board. What's also nice is we get to face off against some monsters who didn't appear in the Super Nintendo game either, so let's run through each of their significances. These include Minotaur, a strong physical brute with a straightforward fighting style. His raw power makes him a formidable obstacle from the get-go. He originally appeared in one of the earliest episodes in the series. The Rangers initially struggle against him, but they ultimately defeat him using their newly acquired power weapons, combined into the Power Blaster, marking the first time this iconic weapon is used in the show. Just a shame this weapon wasn't used in either the Mega Drive or Super Nintendo games within their gameplay. Madam Woe also shows up with a fighting style emulating her techniques seen on television. Known for her mystical powers including weather manipulation, creating illusions and attacking with her long, clawed fingers, in the game she retains her menacing aura, serving as one of the tougher opponents with a distinct fighting style that sets her apart. We also have an opponent I couldn't believe didn't show up in the Super Nintendo game, particularly when we consider how integral he was to the show. Goldar is one of the most iconic villains in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, serving as a loyal general to Rita Repulsa throughout Season 1. A golden-winged warrior clad in armour and wielding a massive sword, Goldar is portrayed as a fierce and intimidating adversary who frequently clashes with the Power Rangers. So really, he should be in every game, including this one. So yet another missed opportunity for the Super Nintendo game that Sega took advantage of. I think that despite featuring several cool nods to the show, the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Mega Drive game ultimately falls short. This game is a straightforward versus fighter, and not a very good one at that. While the Super Nintendo version is a beat-em-up, allowing players to progress through levels fighting waves of putties before the Power Rangers morph and face bosses at the end of each stage. It's much more faithful to the show, and much more fun as a result. The Mega Drive game confines most of its action to one-on-one battles. This approach feels restrictive, offering less variety and replayability, and not ideal for a game that should be trying to replicate the feel of a TV series. While the Mega Drive game includes nods like the Dragon Zord and the Green with Evil arc, it omits key features fans would expect. Sure, it has its merits, but it doesn't deliver the same level of engagement, variety, or even fan service that the Super Nintendo game offers. The latter feels like a more rounded and faithful adaptation, blending the excitement of the Power Rangers with enjoyable gameplay mechanics. For fans of the franchise, the Super Nintendo game is the one that captures the magic of the series better, leaving the Mega Drive version as ultimately an inferior alternative. But then again, maybe I'm just a hopeless Nintendo fanboy, still fiercely loyal and radicalized from the great console war of the 90s. Perhaps the mere sight of that Sega logo clouds my judgment, triggering some long-buried tribal instinct to shout, "Blast processing is a lie," while clutching my Super Nintendo controller like a battle standard. You decide, am I genuinely weighing the merits of these games properly, or am I still fighting a war that ended decades ago? No matter what you think, the answer to me is clear. The Super Nintendo version just feels better, and I'm sticking with that opinion. Subscribe, comment below, and let me know which one you think is the best. Speaking of console wars, don't forget that the last decade has spoiled us with incredible beat-em-ups, and that I can grab you some of the best at huge discounts. How about 60% off Streets of Rage 4, up to 78% off River City Girls, or the thrilling Double Dragon Gaiden slashed by 80% to just $5.19. Plus with my affiliate links you can get up to 90% off thousands of other games, and 45% off of the Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth Twin Pack. Don't miss out, treat yourself, and happy gaming. Cheerio!